Welcome to Every LA Talks with Los Angeles real estate agent Matias Baker Masucci.
Welcome everybody to another very exciting episode of our show. Today we are talking to Bob Brown, who is a foundation expert. Bob, welcome to the show.
Hey, great. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
First thing that I wanted to ask you is, what are some common misconceptions in foundation repairs that you've encountered in your career?
The biggest one is the fact that not all distress is from settlement. You have clays that expand when they get wet, and if they're under the house, then they heave upwards, and that causes distress, and it's very difficult to tell the difference. It's more complicated and perhaps less scary once you understand it. One
of the questions that sometimes comes up in the foundation, it says you have horizontal cracks and vertical cracks. People are always saying, the vertical cracks, not so bad, epoxy, et cetera, but the horizontal cracks, oh no, those are no good. Can you educate me and kind of our audience on what are the difference when you notice those cracks?
Well, it depends what's cracking, okay? So if we're talking about the stem wall, now the stem wall foundation consists of a footing, which is, a foot, maybe 20 inches wide and 8 inches thick. And on top of that footing is what we call a stem wall. And the stem wall, both the footing and stem wall have rebar in them. In the stem wall, you can see 6 inches of it before either the masonry or the wood or the stucco starts, right? And that's that's the area where they can detect termites. That stem wall can get moisture into it, and the moisture attacks the rebar, and the rebar, when it rusts, it starts to grow. The iron oxide takes up more volume than the iron, and that puts pressure on the concrete and cracks it. So you get that horizontal crack along the stem wall. That's a fairly easy thing to fix. It basically involves chipping out the concrete, taking the rusted rebar out and putting a composite rebar in, and a few other things similar to that. That's not expensive and it's not hard to do. Sometimes you get vertical cracks in that stem wall as well, and that's usually the J-bolts or sometimes just a little bit of stress in the footing and stem. Not nearly as difficult as the horizontal crack to deal with.
Who are you suggesting that a buyer should call? The company that does the repair or the engineer?
I'm suggesting that you call an engineer.
Okay.
Engineers, they have oversight from the Board of Technical Registration. That keeps them in line. If they give bad advice, if they take advantage of people, if they do something corrupt or not right, they can be held accountable by the board. If the foundation repair company sends out a salesman that's accountable, in California, there is a board, but it's pretty toothless and it doesn't do anything.
Right.
You're pretty much SOL, because most of what they do is they make it all verbal, which is hard to prove, right? Nothing in writing, and they can't seal the report. I owned a foundation repair company and an engineering company, so I know the difference and I know how they operate. And foundation repair sales guys, their expertise consists of going to a 2-day seminar put on by their supplier. An engineer has 5 years of college, 3 years of apprenticeship serving under an engineer, 2 very difficult exams. And they're held accountable. They have the education to understand these things.
One of the things that comes up sometimes when you call the inspection company is you got to sister the foundation, build a sister wall and things like that. Do you think that is an effective mode of repairs, or are those just patching up when people are saying, to sister the foundation?
It could be. It's very possible, but I wouldn't trust a foundation repair contractor if that's what they're recommending without having other advice, because you may need a sister wall or you may not need a sister wall. It's each situation is unique and it's not simple. You want to rely on your experts. You want to have good engineers, forensic engineers that and have a relationship with, that you can call out quickly and get the real truth.
So what are the things that, usually when people walk in and the floor is uneven, when you see a house, you can walk around and you can be like, okay, I have a general idea of what the situation will be. But for us, non-experts, what are some of the red flags where we can say, okay, I got to call Bob?
So if you see a multitude of cracks. Now, I never get too worried about any one crack. People call me all the time and they say, hey, I have a crack. Well, big deal. I don't get too worried about a crack, especially a crack in the floor. So what I look for is patterns. But, you got cracks around the windows and they don't operate very good. maybe it's a little low in that area. Okay, that's a pattern that you can look at and say, now, is it a really bad pattern? I don't know. You need an expert for that. They'll do a floor level survey and they'll actually rate it using a numerical scale that's provided in the engineering industry, which is something that the foundation repair companies don't know anything about.
That's great. That's very fascinating. And how people can, do something with their whole homes to feel, in an earthquake-prone zone, to feel comfortable.
Right. Yeah, there's code upgrades that happen all the time. And so you want to try to upgrade as much as possible. And there are companies out there that will do retrofits for earthquakes without having to tear the whole thing apart. It's a pretty simple upgrade. So it's not hard to do.
Thank you so much. I'm going to say goodbye to the audience. Stay on so we can say our own goodbye. So thank you, everybody, for joining us in this episode, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you for watching. To find out more, visit everyla.com.